The civilized world we live in today was built using fossil fuels. Since the dawn of man, we have used naturally occurring resources from our environment to sustain life, as well as develop new technologies to increase its quality. Our world today isn't much different. Roughly 88% of the energy used by the world on a daily basis is created using fossil fuels. This may not sound like a surprising statistic, but what we have to comprehend is the Earth's supply of fossil fuels isn't infinite. As each year passes, we deplete a percentage of the Earth's remaining fossil fuels. This is common knowledge, but what most people don't understand is the amount of fossil fuels we have remaining, or just how soon the Earth's fossil fuel reserves are going to be depleted. With current estimates provided by British Petroleum, we know that the Earth has roughly 1,258 billion barrels of oil, 826,001 million metric tons of coal, and 185 trillion cubic feet of natural gas remaining. That seems like quite a lot, but we have to compare our reserves with our current rate of consumption to get the big picture. In 2008, the world consumed 30,826 million barrels of oil, 3,303.7 million metric tons of coal, and 3,018.7 billion cubic meters of natural gas. To put things into perspective, we consumed about 2.5% of our remaining oil reserve, 0.4% of our remaining coal reserve, and 1.6% of our remaining natural gas reserve. At this current rate of consumption, we can expect to exhaust the Earth's oil supply in 40.8 years, coal supply in 250 years, and natural gas supply in 61.3 years. To make matters worse, our current rate of consumption on all of these fossil fuels is increasing. This can be attributed to the fact that many of the world's countries are still developing. As developing countries implement elements of modern-day infrastructure such as electricity and automobiles for every home, they create an increasing need for fuels to power them. Since fossil fuels provide the cheapest, most readily accessible form of energy, they are naturally a developing country's first choice for a national energy source. Following the trend of developing countries using an increasing number of fossil fuels, we see that the world's consumption of oil increased 14.7%, coal increased 46.1%, and natural gas increased 33.1% in the last 10 years. As the world's consumption of fossil fuels increases, their inevitable date of total depletion gets proportionately closer. There is, however, a way to slow down this trend and eventually reverse it. Through the increased implementation and use of renewable energy sources, we can reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, which will prolong their existence. Initially, the implementation of renewable energy sources won't affect the current rate of fossil fuel consumption much. This is because countries capable of implementing them will need to first establish infrastructure that can support their use. Fossil fuels must be used in order to manufacture and construct the initial infrastructure. First world countries will be the biggest users of renewable energy. This will be somewhat nullified by developing countries' increased use of fossil fuels. Likely within the first 10 years of mass renewable energy implementation, the rate of fossil fuel consumption will continue to rise, but at a reduced rate to what we have previously seen. As more countries adopt renewable energy as their primary source, the rate of fossil fuel consumption will begin to decline, and we will see a trend of total world energy coming from more renewable sources and less fossil fuels. Furthermore, once developing countries establish a sustainable infrastructure, they too can implement renewable energy sources as their primary source of energy. It's easy to see how renewable energy will reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, but what types of renewable energy will likely make our transition away from fossil fuels possible? First and foremost, the main types of energy sources that are considered renewable are as follows: solar, hydro, wind, geothermal, and biofuel. There are subtypes for some of these sources as well. Solar power can refer to solar heating panels and photovoltaic cells. Additionally, popular hydropower technology consists of hydroelectric dams, tidal power, and wave power. Geothermal power harnesses heat energy from the Earth's crust and core. According to the Energy Information Administration of the United States Department of Energy, only about 7.3% of the United States energy was derived from these renewable sources in 2008. Even though these renewable energy sources are still in early development phases, scientists and researchers are continuously looking for future sources of renewable energy. The next revolutionary step in renewable energy will be nuclear fusion. Future nuclear power plants would rely on massive amounts of energy that are released during a nuclear fusion reaction. These same types of reactions occur in the cores of stars. Ideally, two atoms are fused together to create one new atom. This new atom has less mass than the combined mass of the two original atoms. This difference in masses is essentially released as energy. Taking into consideration the equation E equals mc squared, the resulting energy would be very large for most fusion reactions. However, scientists are currently unable to recreate reactions in a controlled and stable environment. If they were we're able to control these reactions, the energy gains would be enormous. Unfortunately, this form of energy won't be a viable option for at least another 100 years. While there are a wide range of renewable energy technologies to select from, some are more feasible and efficient to implement than others. For instance, biofuels are appealing as providing a nice short-term transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy. However, they can be considered wasteful and costly in the long run. Since they are typically derived from plant matter, biofuels necessitate entire crops being set aside solely for growing vegetation that will be used for biofuels. This can hinder a country's overall food production. Even so, biofuel energy consumption increased by 28% between 2004 and 2008 in the United States. Additionally, geothermal energy is only feasible in certain locations around the globe. For instance, Iceland can make great use of geothermal power because of the amount of local volcanic activity. While solar power and hydropower are some of the oldest forms of renewable energy, they haven't seen much growth in recent years. In fact, hydroelectric power consumption in the United States dropped 9.6% between 2004 and 2008. Still, scientists continue to make advances in photovoltaic technology for solar power because of the abundance of solar radiation. Conversely, electricity derived from wind power has grown by 262% during the same time frame. This is most likely due to the newer wind farms being placed offshore where winds can be stronger and the size of the wind farms can be larger. Wind power is currently one of the most feasible and efficient solutions for short-term and long-term renewable energy infrastructures. The Renewable Energy Policy Network reported in its Global Status Report of 2009 that electricity generated around the world from wind power was around 120 gigawatts in 2008. It was less than 10 gigawatts in 1996. That's an increase of 1,100% in 12 years. But why is there such an emphasis on renewable energy sources? As it was stated earlier, we know that fossil fuels will run out and when they'll run out. We know how rapidly we are consuming them as well. This rapid consumption and depletion of fossil fuels drives up their costs, which deters people from investing in such types of fuel. These factors make renewable energy sources more favorable for consumers and businesses. This drives up the demand for renewable energy, which in turn increases the amount of funding behind renewable energy technology. Moreover, the benefits of renewable energy sources extend beyond the fact that they are considered renewable. Compared to fossil fuels, renewable energy produces no pollution aside from biofuel combustion producing carbon dioxide emissions. Furthermore, harnessing energy from renewable sources is much safer. There isn't a risk of a coal mine collapsing on people or a nuclear power plant leaking radiation. There is also less damage done to the environment in the sense that we won't need to be drilling for oil and mining for coal. Additionally, there are virtually unlimited reserves of renewable resources. So what does this mean for the future? When will we be entirely reliant on renewable energy sources? During our analysis of current trends, we examined the following curves affecting renewable energy sources. Simply considering growth rates between 2004 and 2008, only 15% of energy in the United States will be derived from renewable energy sources in 2030. Similarly, the U.S. Energy Information Administration reports that this statistic will be only 16% in 2030. This additional percentage will be driven by government incentives such as federal tax credits that were imposed in the 2009 American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. The EIA makes another projection about worldwide energy derived from renewable sources. This statistic will be 21% in 2030. Even by 2055, we have determined that the U.S. will only be getting 45% of its energy from the 5 aforementioned renewable sources. However, if the United States focused solely on implementing and improving wind power technology, we forecast that we could be 100% reliant on it by the year 2024, based on its aforementioned growth rate between 2004 and 2008. This transition can be sped up if the governments offer more incentives such as the ones found in the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Also, as technologies get cheaper for such things as photovoltaic cells, more of them can be implemented in both residential and commercial settings. If consumers see the efficiency and low cost of these technologies, they can install them in and around their homes in order to free themselves from the burden of fossil fuel energy. Furthermore, consumers who do this are able to give surplus electricity back to the energy companies, which can reduce the demand for fossil fuels. A combination of personal and commercial renewable energy implementation can help speed up this transition away from fossil fuels. In conclusion, fossil fuel energy infrastructures are inherently flawed and only have a relatively short lifespan. While we can't tell exactly when we will be completely independent from fossil fuels, we know that people are becoming more and more aware of this issue every day. This growth in awareness will most definitely result in a growth of renewable energy sources being implemented across the globe. As fossil fuels become less and less abundant, their costs will continue to increase, which will deter people from using them. Furthermore, the scientific revelations of fossil fuels pollution are practically scaring people into avoiding them in any way they can. People have begun to realize that renewable energy will avoid issues of high costs and environmental damage in the long run. Governments have begun to implement new policies to encourage this ambitious change into a greener future. Hopefully, the trend of moving toward renewable energy resources will occur more rapidly than we have predicted.